If you saw a police officer knock an innocent woman to the ground in broad daylight, what would you do? Turn away or start recording? And if that woman wasn't just anyone but the Director of Investigations for the US Department of Justice, what would happen to the system that had protected him for years? Today's story isn't just about an assault, it's about a battle against a corrupt system, sparked by the very person it once dismissed. This is the journey of Elena Cole, a woman who doesn't fall and doesn't forgive.
Das.
A rest stop on the outskirts of Dalton, Texas. A quiet Tuesday afternoon. But in 3 minutes, everything will erupt into a fire no one can extinguish. Elena Cole isn't someone you easily forget, but in that moment, no one could have known. A black woman in her early 50s, wearing a grey jacket, faded jeans and sunglasses covering half her face, she looked like just another weary stranger stopping for gas. She drove a sleek black SUV, as smooth as liquid, stepped out, opened the fuel cap, and had no idea that in a few seconds she'd be kicked to the ground by a cop who thought he could do it and get away with it. But what didn't he know? The woman he underestimated wasn't just some passerby. She was the one with the power to shake the entire system, the Director of Internal Investigations for the US Department of Justice. When Deputy Ryan Maddox, a Dalton County officer, stepped out of his dusty patrol car, he didn't see a threat. He saw a black woman who looked out of place, driving a fancy car at a rundown gas station. And for him, that was enough to start trouble. "We don't get many non-Texas plates stopping here," he said, his voice slow, like stone grinding on sand. "Just getting gas, sir," Eleanor replied calmly, politely but not subserviently. But Maddox didn't need a reason. He didn't need logic, just prejudice and power. Without warning, without hesitation, he punched her shoulder, then kicked her shin, a blow hard enough to send her crashing to the concrete. Blood seeped through her denim. Her face showed no pain, only a cold clarity, as if she'd seen this too many times to be surprised. But this time wouldn't be like the others. In a corner by the water pump, a teenager stacking soda cases quietly turned on his phone's camera. That video wouldn't just capture an assault, it would tear apart a system rotting from its roots, because the woman Maddox just knocked down was the one who would stand up and bring down the entire machine behind him. Her name is Elena Cole, and in Washington they don't mention her by title. They mention her with a look of reverence. She is the hidden hand of the Department of Justice, the one behind the quiet but ruthless internal purges. Corrupt officials, abusive cops, and power-hungry bureaucrats. Many of them vanished from the system because of memos bearing Elena's signature, yet no one has ever seen her face on TV. Elena isn't one for the spotlight. She writes the script, not performs it. For over 20 years, she has overseen dozens of federal investigations targeting corrupt law enforcement agencies across the South and Midwest of the United States. She's faced cartels, state governors, and badge-wearing officials with blood on their hands, and she has never backed down. But that day, at a rundown gas station off Highway 14, Elena Cole wasn't carrying a badge. No entourage, no search warrant in hand. Just a woman traveling alone, heading home after hours of closed-door meetings with the Federal Coordination Office in Houston. She just needed to fill up her tank, maybe grab a cold soda and get home before sunset. But the system she had exposed hundreds of times before, today it touched her. Not in a report, not through testimony, but with a kick. And that was its biggest mistake, because Elena Cole never lets anything end with just a kick. The one who recorded the video was Jaden Cruz, a 17-year-old working at the gas station after school. When he filmed Maddox attacking Elena, he didn't know he was capturing a historic turning point. But Elena did. The video was uploaded online just hours after the incident. At first, it had only a few hundred views, but when a law student shared it with the caption, "Cop assaults black woman for no reason in Texas," everything exploded. Within 12 hours, the clip had reached 2 million views. Local news stations started asking, "Who is the woman in the video?" And the answer was about to stun the entire country. Eleanor watched the viral clip from her personal phone, sitting quietly in a small break room at the DOJ office in Austin. She wasn't angry. She analyzed, evaluated. Then she dialed Aaron Kim, the Deputy Director for Internal Intelligence. "I need Maddox's file. Everything. Complaints, colleagues, intervention records, and I need a list of everyone who's been covering for him." "On it," Aaron replied curtly. "What's going on?" "He just kicked the wrong person."
The provided text contains a repeated section, the part about Jaden Cruz and the video going viral. I have translated it only once in the final output, as repeating it verbatim in the translation would be redundant unless intentionally requested. If you want the repetition preserved for stylistic or other reasons, please let me know and I can include it. Bandich Tieng An.
The video, barely 30 seconds long, was enough to ignite a firestorm. It was reshared by a journalism school student, then amplified by a slew of influential accounts with the hashtag Justice for Alina. Social media erupted. TikTok users added music to clipped versions. Instagram applied black and white filters, and Twitter spun threads digging into Maddox's history and calling on Dalton residents to speak out. Eleanor became the focal point without saying a word. Morning news segments began referring to her as the unidentified victim in the shocking Texas incident. But inside the DOJ, they already knew who she was and what was coming if she chose to strike back. Aaron texted, "Do you want me to respond to the media?" Eleanor replied with one word, "Not yet." She didn't need to speak. Her silence was the loudest sound right now. And when people don't know what's coming, that's when they fear the most. Meanwhile, from a simple office in Houston, Elena began mapping out a battle plan. She reconstructed the power structure in Dalton, tracing the connections between Sheriff Lancaster, Maddox, and a private security firm called Warpath Solutions, a name that had once quietly appeared in a rejected proposal. That night, as Twitter hit 6 million views, Elena just stared at her computer screen and whispered, "All right, my turn." Elena didn't take long to realize Maddox was just the tip of the iceberg. The real rot was a system Sheriff Bo Lancaster had been building for over a decade. The data Aaron sent made her blood run cold. 11 complaints against Maddox, not to mention other cases involving 6 officers on his team, all closed within 2 weeks, without a single genuine internal investigation. Every dismissed complaint, every piece of lost evidence passed through Lancaster's hands. Some complaints never even made it into the official grievance system. Eleanor uncovered a series of encrypted PDF files sent internally from Dalton's office to an email linked to Warpath Solutions, the private security firm that once held a surveillance contract with the county. This wasn't just cover-ups, it was a pattern. Eleanor began building a diagram, Sheriff Lancaster at the center, Maddox as his enforcer, and administrative units and partner companies circling around, a sprawling web sustained by power and fear. She opened a new file and named it Dalton's Structure, Internal Corruption. It's not just one bad cop. It's an entire system designed to never call him wrong. As the video went viral and the power structure began to take shape, Eleanor knew one thing. The other side wouldn't sit still. And she was right. Just 2 days later, her SUV, the same one that had stopped at the fateful gas station, was set ablaze in the parking lot of a remote hotel. Firefighters found traces of a shattered glass bottle and charred cloth remnants, a Molotov cocktail. Tucked under the windshield wiper of a nearby car was a handwritten cardboard note. "Stay silent or burn with it." But Elena wasn't the type to know fear. She had survived Mexican cartels, threats from election mafias, and investigations where a single misstep could cost her life. And this time, she was already prepared. She sent the security footage, carefully angled for clarity, to Aaron with a single line. "Start the reflex target. Set the trap." They crafted a script. Elena would appear at the old City Hall, an abandoned building once the administrative heart of Dalton, carrying a decoy bag of files supposedly containing evidence of collusion between Warpath and local police. At exactly 8:37 p.m., The next night, 3 men showed up. One carried a radio, the other 2 wore gloves and black cloth masks. They broke in through the back door, but they didn't know every step they took was being recorded by 5 hidden cameras and watched by 2 federal agents positioned nearby. When one of them snatched the decoy bag, the front door burst open. "FBI, don't move!" They didn't have time to run. One pulled a knife, but was subdued instantly. Eleanor stepped out from a corner of the hallway, staring coldly. "You came looking for evidence. Good, because now you are the evidence." That night, she sent the recorded footage to an independent journalist with a single caption. "Not a threat, a confirmation. This system knows it's about to collapse, and it's panicking."
Yeah, that's it.
When the FBI arrested the 3 intruders, Elena requested a data extraction from the phone one of them had dropped. Within 12 hours, the analysis team had pulled encrypted messages between an internal Warpath account and a political contact. One name appeared repeatedly: Senator Roy Hargis. Eleanor remembered him instantly. Hargis, a former cop, now held a seat on the Texas State Police Oversight Committee and had publicly opposed federal internal investigations, citing encroachment on local authority. The deeper Elena dug, the clearer it became. This was no longer an isolated incident. Leaked emails from Warpath revealed the company had funded Hargis's re-election campaigns for 3 consecutive years. In return, Hargis intervened to shield Sheriff Lancaster from audits and fast-tracked Maddox's promotions within the force. It was a closed circle of power, money, and silence. But this time, one link had broken. Elena called Aaron, her voice resolute. "It's time to touch the legislative level. Activate Hargis's surveillance file. I want all campaign documents, funding records, and off-the-record meetings from the past 3 years." "Priority level?" Aaron asked. "Highest. No turning back." That same night, Eleanor opened a new diagram. Political protection web. At its center, Roy Hargis. Surrounding him were Warpath, Lancaster, subcontractor companies, and unaudited local budget oversight projects. As the screen displayed the final line, Elena leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed. "They're not just covering for one cop, they're covering for themselves, and I'm going to drag every single one of them into the light." Elena didn't choose mainstream media. She sent all her collected evidence to an independent investigative group, Liberty Lens, known for exposing a Louisiana budget scandal and toppling a corrupt mayor. Within 48 hours, they published a 12-page special report titled The Dalton Network, When Politics, Police, and Private Interests Collude to Hide Violence. The article included a connection map: Maddox, Lancaster, Warpath, and, at the center, Roy Hargis. It featured evidence of anonymous transfers from Warpath to a campaign funding pool. There were photos of Maddox shaking hands with Hargis at a private gala. Everything was crystal clear. The internet exploded. The hashtag #Whoa, Burn the Network soared to the top of trending lists. State representatives demanded a hearing. Human rights groups set up protest tents outside Dalton's City Hall. Eleanor didn't speak. She didn't need to. The truth was telling its own story through every word, every piece of evidence, and every outraged public reaction. She just sat in her room, replaying the gas station footage. Watching the moment Maddox kicked her to the ground, and smiling. One kick, and now their entire system is trembling. 3 days after Liberty Lens released its report, the FBI officially announced a federal investigation into the Dalton Police Department and its related financial partners. Major media outlets set up camp in the town. CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox News sent reporters to the scene. The name Elena Cole was no longer anonymous. It was a symbol. Elena stepped in front of the cameras for the first time at a press conference outside the FBI's Houston headquarters. In a deep blue suit, badge pinned to her chest, she didn't deliver a lengthy statement, just one sentence. When justice stays silent, the truth must speak, and today it has spoken. The media held its breath. That image became the cover of countless articles. Her statement was quoted in thousands of posts. Social media erupted with Asgaku, Elena Cole, and has told justice has a name. But while the spotlight of public attention focused on her, Elena kept working in the shadows. She and her legal team quietly submitted a petition to the Department of Justice, demanding criminal accountability for Sheriff Lancaster and Senator Hargis. Attached were 53 pages of cross-referenced documents, 11 audio recordings, and 2 videos from hidden cameras. Every piece of evidence wasn't just aimed at proving illegal acts. It was clear proof of a system built to crush the vulnerable and shield the powerful. Meanwhile, Sheriff Lancaster issued a press release claiming he was the victim of a political smear campaign. But no one bought it. Reporters caught him on camera leaving his house at 3 a.m., his car trunk packed with luggage. That evening, Eleanor received an anonymous text. "You think you've won? This game hasn't even started." She gave a faint smile and typed back a single line. "Good. I haven't left the board, and I don't play to lose." The next morning, search warrants were issued simultaneously. Federal investigators raided the Dalton Police Department headquarters, Roy Hargis's campaign office, and 2 locations tied to Warpath Solutions. Live news broadcasts showed sealed USB drives, confiscated computers, and cracked open safes. Sheriff Lancaster was handcuffed in his office. The media captured him, pale-faced, muttering, "This is a mistake," as he was led out of the building. Maddox was arrested the same day at a roadside motel on the outskirts, where he'd been hiding since Elena's press conference. For Hargis, the fall was quieter. He refused to appear before the State Oversight Committee, but the evidence was overwhelming. A close aide of Hargis quietly cooperated with investigators in exchange for immunity. Then, an audio recording was released. Hargis's voice, crystal clear, saying, "She needs to be stopped before she drags us all into the light." The media needed nothing more. Major outlets called it a modern Watergate at the local level. Dalton residents, once silent, now hung banners outside City Hall. "We've seen, and we won't forget." Eleanor didn't appear on the evening news. She was in a makeshift office at a secure location, monitoring updates from her team. On her desk lay the power structure diagram, with names freshly crossed out in red ink. She looked up, speaking to Aaron through the screen. "We're not done yet. Those men didn't act alone. This system still has people standing in the shadows." And so, the hunt wasn't over. It had only turned to a new page. A week later, Ethna returned to the gas station where it all began. The place where she had fallen from a kick, and also where a campaign was sparked to topple a dark power structure that had thrived for years. The gas station had been renovated. The ground was repaved, new security cameras were installed, and a gleaming new sign hung above. But what made her pause for a long moment was a small bronze plaque to the right of the gas pump. Here, a woman did not stay down. Elena Cole, the spark of the storm, the awakener of justice. She didn't take a photo. She didn't post anything on social media. She just stood quietly, recalling the moment her skin hit the concrete, Maddox's condescending voice, and the system's dismissive gaze. She no longer felt anger, only clarity, sharp as a blade. After the Dalton events, Eleanor resigned from the DOJ, not out of defeat, but to be unbound. She became an independent consultant for non-governmental investigative groups, continuing to gather, connect, and expose cases forgotten in the shadows. New laws began to be drafted at state and federal levels, mandating independent oversight of local police departments, public disclosure of disciplinary records, and bans on opaque financial ties with private security firms. The system started to tremble. But Elena knew victory was never permanent. Evil doesn't die. It merely retreats, changes masks, and shifts tactics. And so, she didn't stop. In a small room in Atlanta, her newly rented office, a new map was already taking shape, pinned with the first red markers. Those red zones were places where justice had yet to arrive. and she was still the one bringing it. When a reporter asked her at a panel discussion, "If you could go back to that moment at the gas station, would you do anything differently?" Eleanor smiled and answered, "I'd still stand there. I'd still let him kick me. And I'd still get up. Because not everyone who falls is a loser. But the one who thinks they have the right to trample others, that's the one who's lost everything." The entire room rose to applaud, but Elena only gave a slight nod. For her, the fight was never over. And when you think this story has come to a close, remember, justice isn't a destination, it's a journey. And sometimes it begins with a kick aimed at the wrong person. Elena Cole wasn't a victim seeking justice. She was justice. She didn't wait for the system to fix its wrongs. She forced it to change brick by brick. This story is a reminder. Justice doesn't come from grand speeches. It comes from quiet courage, from standing up when no one else dares. And sometimes from a kick aimed at the wrong person. If you believe the truth deserves to be heard, share this story. Because Elena may have sparked the fire, but it's you who will keep it burning. Jaden Cruz, the teenager who recorded the gas station incident, suddenly found himself under scrutiny. At first, people called him a teen hero. But soon after, he started receiving anonymous messages. Strangers loitered outside his home, and his mother got a warning letter. "Keep your son out of Elena Cole's mess." Jaden was scared, but he didn't back down. A week after the incident, he recorded another video. In it, he looked straight into the camera, his voice trembling but firm. "I recorded because I saw something wrong, and I don't regret it. If you think you can scare me into hiding the truth, you don't know us at all." The video spread like wildfire. Young people everywhere shared it, along with the message, "Chuck, we are Jaden." Journalists began asking, who's trying to silence a kid and why? Eleanor watched it all in silence.
But deep down, she knew Jaden, with his naive and honest courage, had done what many adults still feared. He had chosen the truth. She sent him a single message under the video. "You did the right thing, and you're not alone."
As Elena was hailed as a symbol of justice, the darker side emerged. A covert but vicious media smear campaign took shape. Fake accounts began spreading misinformation, that Elena had been disciplined internally and that she had failed in a major investigation. An anonymous post accusing her of trading information for power appeared on a fringe blog, then was amplified by hundreds of bot accounts. Social media grew chaotic. Eleanor's supporters were dragged into debates, some even threatened. Aaron sent her a map of the misinformation spread, noting, "This is a tactic to erode trust, to make people doubt the very justice they once backed." Eleanor knew this was the old system's final defense. When it couldn't stop the truth, it would try to make people stop believing in it. Instead of rebutting each accusation, she countered with data. A comprehensive report was publicly released. Her work history, successful investigations, and the times she refused to compromise for ethical reasons. Through silence and transparency, she made every slander seem small. A journalist wrote, "She doesn't react, she reflects." And in that light, liars cannot survive. Amid the storm of public opinion, Elena received a call from an old landline number. No caller ID. The voice belonged to Judge Maxwell Dean, who had retired after 35 years serving in the Southern District Federal Court. Once a symbol of integrity, he had stayed silent in his final years due to health reasons. His voice was hoarse but resolute. "I faced pressure from Warpath. They wanted me to dismiss a complaint from a teenager beaten in detention. I refused, and they threatened me. I kept records of 3 cases they tried to influence. I'm giving them to you now." Eleanor sat still for a moment, then asked, "Why now, sir?" Maxwell replied, "Because you've given me a reason to believe silence is no longer the safest choice." That night, a courier delivered a package to Eleanor's office. Inside were copies of court rulings, internal memos with handwritten notes pressuring for acquittals, and a recording of a closed meeting mentioning backroom deals between prosecutors and Warpath. This wasn't just evidence. It was the missing piece for Elena to expand the case from Dalton into a national network. She sent a single message to Aaron. Launch Operation Mirror. From now on, we don't just counterattack. We reflect the entire picture.
Sir?
As the Mirror report began to roll out, Elena and her team didn't just gain attention from authorities or the media, but from ordinary people. Those who once felt alone now had a place to send their truths. An elderly woman from Ohio mailed Elena a handwritten letter recounting how her son was arrested for uncooperative behavior after asking why police stopped his car. She wrote, "I stayed silent for 7 years, out of fear. But now, I can't let anyone else be treated like my son." In a small Arkansas town, Black mothers formed a group called Mothers No Longer Silent, sharing stories of being followed, interrogated, or abused by authorities just for daring to ask questions. On social media, a former soldier posted a photo of himself in uniform, captioned, "I fought for freedom overseas. Now I fight for justice in my own community." The post garnered 2 million shares. Eleanor watched it all. She saw seeds sprouting from the ashes of the old system. And for the first time in months, she quietly thought, maybe this time the fire won't go out. Because it's no longer just me. One early morning, Elena received an unmarked package. Inside was an old USB drive, accompanied by a handwritten note. "I was in that room. I can't stay silent anymore." The scrawled words bore no signature. Aaron and the tech team examined the files, recordings of closed-door meetings between Warpath's top executives and a representative from the governor's office. A voice spoke clearly. "We need to take Elena down before she connects everything. If we lose the Dalton contract, we lose the whole region." Another segment, more chilling. "If we can't silence her, make the public turn on her. Fabricate a scandal. Put her in front of the press as a traitor." Eleanor sat in silence. This was no longer mere self-defense. It was an organized campaign, strategic, funded, and backed by political hands. She immediately sent copies to 3 independent news organizations, along with a note, "I don't keep evidence to myself. The truth shouldn't be proprietary." Days later, when the recordings were published, a wave of nationwide outrage erupted. People no longer asked if the system was corrupt, but rather, how deep did the rot go? Facing intense public backlash, Warpath could no longer stay silent. They hired a high-profile PR firm and held a press conference where their lawyer read a statement. "Warpath is the victim of a political conspiracy. We have committed no wrongdoing." But the press conference turned into a farce. When a reporter asked about the recordings, the representative only said, "We haven't verified their authenticity." The crowd burst into laughter. Netizens dubbed it the evaporating press conference for its complete lack of counter-evidence. At the same time, Eleanor released an independent 81-page investigative report detailing every illicit contract, every involved figure, and every budget line laundered through shell companies. The report didn't just target Warpath. It exposed the complicit officials who enabled them. A week later, the Department of Justice announced a special federal investigation. 3 CEOs of satellite companies backed by Warpath resigned on the same day. A senator was suspended from policy advocacy. Eleanor didn't respond to the press, but the media knew she had struck, and it was a blow no one could parry. Aaron looked at the next day's headlines. "She doesn't fight with words. She fights with truth." While all eyes were on the investigations, Elena quietly relocated her operations to a renovated old warehouse in the southern outskirts of Houston. There, she formed a covert investigative team codenamed Mirror Cell, dedicated to analyzing data, tracing financial trails, and unraveling the web of interests between corporations and politicians. The team included a former special agent, an investigative journalist, a coder who once worked for the NSA, and a lawyer fired for refusing to sign a fraudulent document. Eleanor pinned connection maps to the walls. Warpath wasn't the center. It was just a tool. The true hub was a council of 4 individuals, a former Interior Secretary, a hedge fund chairman, a retired senior judge, and a name no one had heard before, but appeared in every critical email. Halberd. Aaron asked, "What are we doing here, Elena? This is beyond the law." Elena replied, eyes fixed on the diagram. "We're not breaking the law. We're exposing those who rewrote it to escape. And I want to know who gave them that power." Outside, rain began to fall. But inside, a plan was taking shape, not just to uncover wrongdoing, but to strike at the core where power thrives without light. As Miracell traced financial trails to a subsidiary based in Delaware, something strange happened. 2 servers hosting critical documents went offline abruptly. It wasn't a technical glitch, it was deliberate sabotage from within. The team's coder, Malik, reviewed access logs and found traces of military-grade spyware embedded in their systems from the start. Eleanor went still. "We've been watched from the beginning," she said. "Not just Miracell, but me." That same night, an employee at the Judicial Archive, where Dalton's original case files were stored, was rushed to the hospital for poisoning. Their condition was critical. Tests revealed the toxin was delivered through a coffee cup during a night shift. "Someone's trying to eliminate insiders," Aaron said, his voice low. "And if they're willing to act at this level, what we're about to uncover is much bigger." Elena didn't argue. She turned to Malik. "We need a new space, completely isolated, and we restart everything with quantum encryption." Malik nodded. "But if we do that, they'll know we know. They'll strike." Elena's lips tightened. "Then let them strike first. And this time, we don't just defend."
Yes.
The next day, Eleanor appeared at a closed-door conference in the Capitol, attended by representatives from the Department of Justice, Congress, and international organizations focused on government transparency. She wasn't formally invited, but her presence silenced the room instantly. During the Q&A, a young delegate stood, voice tense. "Ms. Cole, does your evidence suggest the involvement of someone at the federal level?" The room fell silent. Live cameras froze for a few seconds, as if hesitating. Eleanor didn't flinch. She stepped to the podium, her gaze unwavering. "The real question isn't, is there someone? It's, how many? And who's protecting them?" A wave of murmurs erupted. Some stood. A few reporters received urgent messages from their editors. The head of domestic intelligence left the room minutes later. Eleanor continued, her voice slow but sharp as a blade. "When an entity like Warpath can quietly deploy military-grade spyware, when law enforcement is manipulated, when witnesses are poisoned, and when all of this goes undetected for years, that's no longer a case. It's a structure." She paused, then concluded, "And that structure is starting to crack. Because justice doesn't come from the top down. It begins when ordinary people dare to ask the question everyone fears hearing."
Governor.
At 5 a.m. the next morning, a seemingly routine radio broadcast sent shockwaves through the independent investigative community. An anonymous cybersecurity engineer, formerly with a Warpath subcontractor, revealed over FM waves that data ordered erased 6 months ago wasn't just about Dalton. It concerned a network spanning 8 counties across 4 states, where Warpath orchestrated surveillance systems for local governments. He didn't give his name, but left a set of deleted file identifiers and a decryption key. Eleanor was sipping coffee in the Miracell meeting room when the broadcast came on. Aaron immediately replayed it, while Malik cross-referenced the identifiers with data they'd suspected was tampered with. "It's them," Malik said, voice choked. "They didn't just erase evidence. They erased whistleblower identities, money trails, and plans to expand the surveillance system internationally." Eleanor said nothing for 30 seconds. Then she stood, saying curtly, "The structure we saw cracking is now showing its roots. And this time, we'll pull it up by those roots." From the hundreds of gigabytes of data seized in the raids, one name kept resurfacing: M. Halberd. No official records, no photos. But in every document, from funding allocations to internal memos, there were traces of an entity by that name. Malik traced an IP address from a deleted email leading to a private office in DC, registered to an opaque political investment fund. Elena knew if there was one person tying Warpath, Senator Hargis, and covert federal deals together, it was M. Halberd. Aaron couldn't believe his eyes when they uncovered a recording of Monsieur Halberd's real voice speaking to a senior White House advisor. "Don't let her reach the third tier. If Elena Cole gets to the federal policy memo codes, we all lose our seats." Elena listened to it over and over. Then she looked up, calm. "The third tier, huh? Good. Then we need a ladder." The next day, Miracell sent a dossier to a group of neutral senators requesting an emergency hearing. But Elena knew this couldn't just be a hearing. It had to be an unmasking, direct, in front of the public. She prepared a speech, not from notes, just a screen behind her, displaying the faces of those who had given orders from the shadows. Among them, for the first time, was the real face of M. Halberd. He's not a ghost. He has a name, a seat, and power, but the one thing he doesn't have is the truth. And today, we bring that to him. The entire hall went silent, but this time, Eleanor didn't need to wait for more silence. She had stepped straight into the third tier and brought nothing but light. That noon, every national media outlet switched feeds. An unprecedented press conference was held at the US Senate. Eleanor Cole, no longer a lone agent, now stood at the heart of national politics, invited as the key witness in a federal investigation into abuse of power and manipulation of public policy. TV networks cut music, cancelled programs, and broadcast her speech live. Elena stepped to the podium. No notes, no teleprompter. Just the truth. We've been deceived, not by one organization, but by an alliance of power and silence. They manipulated laws, controlled budgets, quietly erased the names of those who dared to ask, and built invisible walls around what we call justice. She paused, her eyes scanning the room where politicians who once refused to meet her now listened in silence. But justice doesn't need privilege. It needs light, and today we bring it. Every face in this network has been identified. Every money trail has been traced, and every lie is now being exposed, word by word. Screens lit up behind her, displaying evidence, names, dates, and audio clips one by one. Several senators stood and left the room. A few political advisors bowed their heads. Outside, the crowd erupted in cheers. Not for a handshake, but because the truth finally had someone daring to speak it. As Elena stepped down, a reporter asked, "What do you think happens next?" She replied calmly, "I don't know what they'll do, but I know this time. They won't do it in the dark." A month later, as Elena stood outside her usual coffee shop, a man approached and handed her a black envelope. Inside was an old photo of her at that gas station years ago. But something strange. In the corner of the image was a blurry figure wearing a badge identical to Miracell's, dated 1998. On the back of the photo, a single line was written, "Connor, Eleanor, did you think you were the first? This system was built long before you were born, and the last person who tried to topple it is no longer remembered by anyone. Good luck." Elena gripped the photo tightly. She didn't know what was more unsettling, that someone had been watching her from the start, or that they had known she would come for a very long time.